everyone, welcome to Formulations. I'm your host, Marisa Boevers, and I'm here at ThoughtForm, a communication design consultancy located in Pittsburgh. And I'm joined here today with my colleague, Norm Goldberg. Norm is a principal owner and design strategist here at ThoughtForm. And Norm and I are going to talk a little bit about innovation today.
Yes.
It's a good topic.
It's a great topic.
It feels like maybe there's nothing left to be said, but we're going to try.
Yes.
So, Norm, we're a communications firm. We focus a lot on visual communication, written communication, and it seems like we do a lot of work that touches on innovation.
Yeah.
So there's some relationship there between communication and innovation. Why do you think it is that communication is so important for innovation?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons, Marissa. One is that innovation is inherently fuzzy. It's just the nature of it. You can't rest on the assumptions that you've always had. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? You're trying to do something new. And you can't rest on assumptions about what your colleagues are thinking. What's Marissa thinking? What's Norm thinking? Because everything's kind of new. And so communication becomes really important. You've got a different perspective than I have. And those differences are very valuable because nobody really has a monopoly on the truth at that point.
Yeah.
And so by working through those different perspectives, we're doing important work that helps us innovate better.
Yeah, I think the juxtapositioning of ideas, right? You say something,
Yes.
I say something, it all bounces together.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's absolutely key to it.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is very important about communication and innovation is that communication can really be a catalyst for innovation. And what I mean by that is the questions that we ask in oftentimes when we're working with clients, and you've seen this a million times in our vision catching sessions, we'll ask, hey, have you ever thought about how this would work? Or we see a gap over here, or I'd like to challenge that a little bit. The conversations that come out of that really help make whatever's being created better.
Yeah.
Because I like to think of those conversations as kind of the rough draft of the product that you're making.
Right.
And I find that if you can't really explain what you're doing that clearly, maybe you're not thinking about it quite clearly enough.
There's definitely a correlation between how I think about it, how I communicate it, and how those two things, right? So,
yeah.
It's a great.
And it's very cheap to work through it that way.
Absolutely.
And you can eliminate a lot of problems. So
Yeah.
I think the idea of communication as a catalyst is important.
Yeah, that's a good one. So we've helped a lot of clients with innovation processes, right? How does an enormous organization take an idea all the way through to kind of evaluating it, piloting it? Why do you think an innovation process matters? Why should organizations have an innovation process?
Yes, I think that's a good question. And I mean, just think about our expectations these days. As consumers, I can think back to that when the first Diet Cola came out. When was that? 1960s. It was an earthquake. It was a revolution. How could there be such a thing?
Right.
And then, a couple months ago, Coke came out with 5 new flavors of Diet Coke, and they were like kind of adventurous flavors.
Mango.
And it was like,
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, it was an item in my news feed.
Right.
These days, just about everybody knows somebody who's launched a cool thing on Kickstarter. I know you and I know someone like that.
Right.
And so innovation is really the new normal.
Yeah.
And, you have to just make it part of your process.
Yeah. Be disciplined about it.
Be disciplined about it. Just sort of take it as a given. But it's challenging because in a lot of ways, innovation is antithetical to the way business was traditionally done. I mean, how do you make money in business? You figure out something people really want, and you come up with an algorithm for delivering it, and then you just keep taking costs out of that equation. But that's kind of counter to the way innovation really works. Innovation is about, sometimes fixing things that may not seem like they're broken. Sometimes you go down blind alleys and you have to start over. It doesn't really always play well with a traditional chain of command because, how do you sell up the chain on something that no one can really see yet or feel?
Yeah.
So it can be challenging to
It's
innovate.
almost like you have to have a plan because it's going to be counter to your
Yes,
nature. So if you don't
yes.
plan for it, you won't do it.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. You have to have a plan. You have to do it very intentionally, I think,
Yeah.
and I found that you have to socialize it.
Definitely.
It makes me think of a conversation I had with a product manager who told me, I want to innovate. I have this idea. The first thing I'm going to have to do is tell how much it's going to cost. I went to engineering. I said, how much is this going to cost? They said, well, give me the spreadsheet.
Right.
And you need to have this cost and that cost and that cost. And she said, I can't innovate that way.
Right, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not agile.
It's too much.
So, too much. So a lot of organizations struggle with kind of bootstrapping their way into that mindset.
Yeah.
So it has to be conscious. But once you get there, once you get over that hurdle, you can really start creating a lot of value.
Yeah, absolutely. So during an innovation process, we've talked about communication is key for innovation. We've talked about why you need an innovation process. But it seems like even people who have an innovation process, there are some barriers to communicating
Yes.
during that process. What do you see as the biggest barrier for teams?
Yeah, well, there's a couple I might want to mention, and one is, and again, these are largely cultural. One is that we feel, as business people, we feel like we need to be the experts. Like, I have expertise in a certain area, so we feel almost silently judged on how well we can answer those questions that come up.
Yeah.
But the truth is, in innovation processes, there are a lot of unknowns. No one's that much of an expert. And what you really have to do is cultivate an ability to be an expert questioner and an expert explorer and an expert collaborator.
Yeah.
And if you think that you're going to be the one who just has all the answers, you're kind of setting yourself up.
Yeah.
So that's one barrier. I think another one that we see a lot is silos. So, when we have people here for a workshop, we have a cross-functional team from an organization, what's the first thing they do? They huddle together in little pods for like 15 minutes because they haven't seen each other in weeks and they don't know what each other are doing, and it's so fascinating to compare notes. They've been, because they're under a lot of pressure, truthfully. They've been heads down in their cubes for 2 weeks. So we see a lot of siloing. People talk about how when Steve Jobs was designing the headquarters for Pixar, he said there's going to be only one set of bathrooms.
Right.
Because he knew that people need those reasons to kind of cross paths and
Right.
cross-pollinate.
I get a lot of work done in the bathroom, so yeah, that works. I agree. So one thing that I see a lot is within an innovation process, there seems to be a big pain point for a lot of teams on selling a new
Yes.
idea to leadership.
Yes.
Right? It's like,
This is the moment of truth.
I know my idea is good. I've worked it out with my team. We fleshed it out. But now I got to get the boss man to sign off on it.
Yep.
So we help a lot of teams with that. Do you have any
Yep.
tips on how to get approval? What's the secret sauce for getting leaders to buy in?
Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. This is a very challenging area. But I was talking to an entrepreneur, a very successful guy, teaches at Carnegie Mellon here in Pittsburgh, and he said, I've seen a lot of pitch decks, and they really do their homework. They've got all the charts, they've got all the graphs, they've done the research, but there's one critical thing that they haven't quite nailed down, and that is, how do you know for sure that people really, really want this thing? And it seems obvious, but it's actually really easy to spin this beautiful web of innovation ideas and not have that certainty.
Right.
So I would say, it's great to have the quantitative research, but you really need some qualitative research. You need to have that sort of granular feel for how people will respond to the idea.
Yeah.
And you have to have some evidence that you've done that.
Yeah.
So it's an obvious step, but some people miss it.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Yeah. What does the market really think about this idea? Yeah.
And it takes a little time to get a real feel for that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is that innovation is a little different in terms of how far out you can look. That if anyone says they have a 5-year innovation plan, it's probably they're probably blowing smoke.
Yeah.
I would say if you can tell a really great story about how you got to the stage gate you're at and what you need, what insights and knowledge you need to get to the next stage gate and how you're going to do that, then that's what to focus on. And
Yeah.
if you can get a green light on that, that's a victory in innovation.
Yeah, right. There's no better way to look foolish than to have a 5 or 10 year projection plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in innovation, each step sort of tells you what the next step should be oftentimes.
Sure. That's good. So here at ThoughtForm, we help lots of teams, you especially, to develop innovation processes and to guide them through ideation sessions and then to get that approval from leadership. So if there's someone out there who's really struggling with innovation in their organization that's just not getting off the ground or they're not getting the results they're expecting, what would you tell them to focus on? What should they look at to kind of help move that forward?
Yeah. Well, if I could only give one tip, I think it would be to realize how easy it is, especially today, to model the thing you're creating.
Yes.
I mean, you've probably seen presentations, I know I have, where it's a very thorough presentation about a project, but after it's over, you ask yourself, why can't I see it? Why can't I envision the thing that they were, talking about? And it's so easy today, whether you're doing renderings or 3D models, or a lot of times the clients that we're working with, it's somewhat of an intangible thing.
Right,
it's
a process or a service.
Yeah, something you can't necessarily reach out and touch, but we have found ways to model that through techniques like vision catching and fog lifters and others, so that you can really see it before it's built. But I would say start early. It's sort of like the advice you always get about investing. Start in your 20s and then you'll take care of your future. It's like that. Start early because insights compound upon insights.
Yeah.
Make it visible. Make everybody able to see it. Make it central to your process. Share it a lot. Share it with colleagues. Share it with customers. And tell them, this isn't right. This isn't it. But this is something we can react to and it'll get us there.
Yeah.
Because if you just go through a very rigorous process and you expect the right answer to pop out at the back, it's just not going to happen. Not in an innovation sphere.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip. Well, thank you, Norm, so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you would like to hear a little more about ThoughtForm's perspective on innovation, you can visit our website. Check out our recent white paper about how to filter new ideas to find your best ones, or our blog post about designing an innovation process. And please join us again next month when we're going to talk about communicating for sustained change management. So those long-term changes within your organization. It'll be a great topic. Thanks, everyone.